information came direct from Meghan's ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, via an intermediary. And obviously, Trevor Engelson is a very successful TV producer. He now has his own family. He's very happy.
Your trusted source for the stories they tried to erase. The story you're about to hear was never meant to be released. Not because it's untrue, but because it's uncomfortable. Because it disrupts a narrative that has been carefully protected for years. Because once you hear it, you can't unhear it. This isn't a gentle story. It isn't polished, and it isn't easy. For years, the world has been shown one version of the truth, clean, controlled, and carefully edited. But there is another version, one that never made it past the cutting room floor, and at the center of it is a man who stayed silent long enough for the story to be rewritten without him, Trevor Engelson. And this is what happens when the person who knew the beginning finally steps out of the shadows, when the past refuses to stay buried, when the story that was erased starts pushing its way back into the light. What you're about to hear doesn't just add a footnote to history. It changes everything you thought you knew. For years, everything about Meghan Markle has been presented like a finished movie. Smooth scenes, clean edits, no awkward pauses, no missing frames. A story that flows so neatly you're never meant to question it. Girl meets ambition. Ambition meets opportunity. Opportunity leads to fame. Fame leads to royalty. End of story. Except real lives don't work like that. Real lives have rough drafts. And sometimes, entire chapters are torn out. Long before the cameras, before the palace walls, before carefully chosen words and controlled interviews, Meghan was just another young woman trying to figure out who she was and where she was going. No royal protocol, no global spotlight, no audience watching her every move. And during that unguarded time, there was someone standing close enough to see what never made it into the final version. Trevor Engelson. He wasn't royalty. He wasn't part of the fantasy. He knew her before everything was polished, before the rough edges were smoothed away. He knew her when life was still complicated, still unfinished, still human. People like to believe that once someone becomes famous, the past disappears. That old chapters quietly fade away. But the truth is darker than that. The past doesn't vanish. It just gets buried. And according to whispers that have followed Trevor for years, there were pieces of Meghan's early life that didn't fit the story later sold to the world. Not tabloid scandals, not messy Hollywood drama, something deeper, something older, something that didn't belong in the fairy tale. There is a gap in her timeline that almost no one talks about. A blank stretch of time where details fade, dates blur, and explanations sound rehearsed. A missing year. A silence so complete that most people never even noticed it was there. But silence doesn't happen by accident. Silence is created. To understand where that silence begins, you have to go back to Las Vegas. Not the bright lights and loud casinos people imagine, but a small wedding chapel tucked just off the strip. The kind of place you walk past without ever paying attention. This was the mid-1990s. Meghan was only 18. No fame, no attention, no one watching. Inside that chapel stood Meghan Markle and a man named Joe Giuliano. No big celebration, no dramatic photos, no headline-grabbing moment, just two young people, a quiet ceremony, and two family witnesses. What happened there wasn't symbolic, it wasn't pretend, it wasn't a rehearsal. They signed a marriage certificate. Ink met paper, legal, binding, real. For a brief moment, Meghan Markle was someone's wife. And then, just as quietly as it began, it ended. Not with a divorce, with something far more final. An annulment. Divorce admits something existed and then fell apart. An annulment erases the entire thing. It tells the world it never happened at all. No marriage, no record, no past. In Nevada, annulments move fast. Faster than almost anywhere else. If both parties agree, the process can be over in days. And if requested, the entire file can be sealed. Not hidden, not partially visible. Completely sealed. When records are sealed, they don't appear in searches. They don't show up with blacked out lines. They simply disappear. That's exactly what happened. The annulment was filed. The records were sealed, and on paper, the marriage never existed. But sealed files are never meaningless. Courts don't seal things unless there's something inside worth protecting. Something sensitive. Something that doesn't belong in public view. For someone young, unknown, and not yet famous, this was the perfect eraser. A legal reset. A way to walk away from Las Vegas without carrying the past behind you. On the outside, it looked like nothing happened. But something had. Because while paperwork can vanish, time cannot. After Las Vegas, Meghan's story doesn't move forward. It disappears. Officially, she took a gap year. A harmless explanation. A break before college. Time to travel. Time to explore the world, time to find herself before enrolling at Northwestern University. It sounds reasonable. Plenty of young people do it. But when you look closer, the evidence isn't there. No travel records, no exchange program paperwork, no photos abroad, no snapshots in front of landmarks, not one verified trace of this supposed journey. For an entire year, Meghan leaves no footprints. Instead of airports and postcards, there is silence. According to accounts connected to the Giuliano family, she didn't travel at all. She stayed in one place, quietly, away from attention. Chicago. She allegedly lived under the Giuliano family's roof, far from Hollywood, far from the future she would later build. This missing year isn't just empty, it's locked. And inside that silence, something happens that changes everything. Midway through that year, the story takes a turn that's hard to hear and impossible to ignore. According to whispers from those close to the Giuliano household, Meghan gave birth. Not publicly, not under her own name, not surrounded by celebration or announcements. Quietly, privately, carefully kept off the record. A baby girl. Almost immediately, a decision was made. The Giuliano family would raise the child as one of their own. She would be given a new identity, folded into their household, protected by silence. Meghan would step away, never publicly claiming her. One relative later described it in a sentence that still echoes. She was Meghan's before she was ours. That line carries weight. This wasn't gossip built by strangers. This was described as a chapter that was lived, decided, and erased. A life that continued forward without her name attached to it. By late 1995, the arrangement was complete. And then Meghan disappeared again. When she reappears, it's as if she's been reset. She enrolls at Northwestern University, joins the theater program, makes friends, builds a life that looks organized, ambitious, and forward-moving. This is the Meghan the public later meets. At the same time, something else happens quietly and completely. All contact with the Giuliano family stops. Not slowly, not naturally. A full stop. No visits, no calls, no check-ins. The Las Vegas marriage is never mentioned. The annulment is treated like it never existed. And the child, if she existed at all, is erased entirely. This wasn't just growing up, it was a decision. A clean break, a future built with no room for questions about the past. From that point on, Meghan's story becomes smooth, predictable, easy to tell. High school, college, acting, Hollywood, royalty, no missing years, no sealed files, just a polished timeline moving in one clean direction. But stories built on silence don't stay silent forever. Years later, cracks begin to form, small ones at first, dates that don't line up, numbers that wobble. Meghan's birth year has long been listed as 1981. On paper, it works. It places her at the right age for school, for early roles, for a royal wedding. Everything fits if you don't look too closely. But when people did look closer, things started to feel off. Archived photos from Northwestern show her alongside classmates whose alumni records suggest they graduated high school years earlier than her official timeline allows. One mistake can be dismissed, but it happens again and again. Older alumni programs quietly list alternative birth years, not dramatically different, just enough to matter. If those dates are closer to the truth, something important changes. Meghan wouldn't have been a teenager in the mid-1990s. She would have been older, old enough for the Las Vegas marriage to make sense, old enough for the missing year to align, old enough for a birth in 1995 to fit without bending reality. Suddenly, the pieces stop fighting each other. They click. Then there's Archie's birth certificate, filed like any other royal document, and then quietly amended, her first and middle names removed, only her royal title left behind. Palace officials brushed it off as clerical, but insiders admitted they had never seen this done for any other royal mother. That matters, because it proves documents can be altered, controlled, adjusted. If a modern, high-profile royal birth certificate can be changed under global scrutiny, then what about older records? High school files, travel logs, court documents from a Las Vegas courthouse in the 1990s. Records don't need to be destroyed to disappear. They only need to be controlled. Sealed annulments, adjusted dates, quiet amendments. Over time, what remains looks clean not because nothing happened, but because everything else was removed. If Meghan did give birth in 1995, that child wouldn't be a child anymore. She would be nearly 30. And according to quiet memories from Chicago, there was always someone there. A young girl at family gatherings. Never explained, never introduced, simply present. She's part of the bloodline, one relative said once. But nobody talks about her anymore. Recently, whispers surfaced that this same woman, now grown, has quietly had a child of her own. No announcements, no celebration, just another life beginning in silence. If true, the implication is staggering. It would mean Meghan Markle isn't just a mother. She's already a grandmother. And this is where Trevor Engelson's shadow matters. He knew Meghan before the reset, before the Polish, before the story was simplified. According to whispers tied to his circle, he confirmed what others only sensed. Her past wasn't just refined. Parts of it were buried. Secrets don't disappear. They wait. In sealed files. In altered timelines. In memories people stop finishing out loud. And sometimes they return through the one thing no document can erase. Blood. The real question isn't whether this chapter exists. It's what happens when it finally opens. And when that chapter opens, it won't arrive gently. Truth never does. It doesn't knock, it doesn't ask permission. It pushes its way in through the smallest cracks, through a name spoken too softly, through a date that doesn't quite match, through a sealed file someone forgot was still there. Every story that's been buried leaves pressure behind it, and pressure always finds a way to escape. Because silence has a cost. It weighs on everyone who helps carry it, on the families who agree never to explain, on the people who learn to look away, on the ones who grow up feeling something is missing but never being told what it is. And eventually, that weight becomes too heavy to hold. If there is a daughter who grew up believing one story and later discovers another, that moment doesn't just change her life. It shakes everything connected to it. It questions timelines, identities, and the version of truth the world was taught to accept. And no title, no palace wall, no carefully written biography can stop that reckoning once it begins. Because erased chapters don't stay erased forever. They wait, they breathe quietly beneath the surface. And when they rise, they don't just rewrite the past. They force the future to answer for it.